The courtroom was already buzzing before the case even properly began, like everyone had shown up expecting entertainment more than justice. The father made sure of it. He sat comfortably in the front row, leaning back with the confidence of a man who believed the entire system existed to validate him. Every time he looked at his son, there was a small smile, sharp, rehearsed, humiliating. Not the smile of victory, but of someone who enjoyed the act of cutting someone down in public. "You've always been useless," he said loudly enough that even the clerk paused. "I gave him every chance. Education, connections, even money. And still, nothing. This is the man claiming inheritance rights?" A few people in the gallery exchanged awkward glances. The son didn't react. He just stood there calmly, hands folded, as if the insults were background noise rather than targeted attacks. That calmness irritated the father more than any argument could have. Then the lawyer stepped in. He wasn't flashy. No dramatic entrance, no theatrical confidence, just quiet precision. He adjusted a file, glanced at the judge, and began speaking in a tone so controlled it almost felt casual. Every claim the father made was met with a correction so exact it didn't feel like debate, it felt like correction of reality itself. "That assertion is inconsistent with the signed restructuring clause dated 6 years prior," the lawyer said smoothly. The father scoffed. "Clause? He doesn't even understand basic contracts." But the lawyer didn't look at him. He was already turning pages, referencing documents that seemed too detailed, too organized, too prepared to be reactive. It felt like he had written the outcome before the trial even started. The son still said nothing, but something subtle shifted in his expression. Not confidence exactly, but patience. Like someone watching a system complete a process they had already designed long ago. Behind them, the courtroom staff began to pay closer attention. Even the judge leaned forward slightly, sensing that this was not going to unfold like a normal inheritance dispute. And somewhere in the background, the lawyer briefly exchanged a quiet, almost amused glance with the female court analyst, as if they shared a private understanding about how predictable this entire situation already was. The father's confidence didn't just return after that, it doubled. If anything, the lawyer's calm responses only encouraged him, like he believed he was dealing with someone who looked smart but had nothing underneath. He leaned forward, tapping the table with exaggerated frustration, and began escalating his attacks. "So this is your big defense?" he said loudly. "Paperwork tricks? Technical nonsense? My son can't even manage a basic business account, and you expect this courtroom to believe he controls anything meaningful?" A few people shifted in their seats, uncomfortable with the tone, but the father thrived on it. He pointed at his son as if presenting evidence. "This man has done nothing. No achievements. No leadership. No contribution. Just existing. And now he appears here pretending to be something important." The lawyer finally responded, but not to the insults. He responded to the structure behind them. "That claim conflicts with documented asset flow records from the last 8 fiscal cycles," he said calmly, sliding a folder forward. "All verified under registered consultancy oversight." The father laughed. "Consultancy? What consultancy? He can't even afford." But he stopped mid-sentence as the lawyer placed another document down. Then another. Each one carried timestamps, signatures, transaction logs, and legal classifications that didn't look improvised. They looked assembled over time with precision. The courtroom atmosphere changed subtly again. It was no longer about arguments, it was about exposure. The father kept trying to speak over it, but every sentence he formed was already being neutralized by documentation he hadn't seen before. Even the judge began reviewing the papers more carefully, eyebrows tightening slightly. The son still remained silent, but now his silence felt different. It wasn't passive anymore, it felt like observation. Like he was watching a system execute exactly as intended, without deviation. The lawyer continued, voice steady. "Every objection raised has already been accounted for within the estate's layered governance structure." That phrase hit differently. Layered governance structure. It sounded less like a family dispute and more like an engineered system. The father frowned, suddenly less amused. What structure are you talking about? Stop hiding behind fancy words. But even as he spoke, the courtroom staff began exchanging glances. Some of them were quietly checking internal records, as if trying to confirm something they were only now starting to suspect. And somewhere in the background, the female legal assistant watched the lawyer a little longer than before, not surprised, but impressed, like she had seen this kind of precision once before and knew exactly what it meant when everything started aligning too perfectly. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted in a way that even the father could feel, like the air itself had become heavier. He tried to recover his confidence with a laugh, but it came out sharper, more forced. He slammed his hand lightly on the table. This is ridiculous. I want actual proof of ownership. Not these rehearsed documents and corporate fantasy stories. The lawyer didn't react to the anger. He simply opened a sealed folder that had been sitting untouched since the beginning of the hearing. Even the judge noticed it this time. There was something final about it, like it wasn't part of the argument, but the conclusion of it. Your Honor, the lawyer said calmly, this is the Consolidated Estate Authority record. A pause followed. Not dramatic, but heavy enough that even the smallest sound in the room felt loud. The father leaned back slightly, still trying to smirk, but it was starting to fade. The documents were projected for review. Layer after layer of ownership structures appeared: trust frameworks, subsidiary holdings, legal consolidations, all tied to a single controlling name: the son. At first, the father laughed. A short, dismissive sound. That's impossible. He doesn't even understand how to manage his own life, let alone. But the lawyer interrupted, gently, almost politely. The consolidation was executed under signed family restructuring protocols from 7 years ago. All parties, including yourself, approved the transfer under standard administrative categorization. The words landed slowly. Not as accusations, but as confirmation. The father's expression tightened. No. I never agreed to. Page 47, the lawyer said. Another document appeared. The father's signature. Not once, but multiple times across different approvals he clearly never studied in detail. Small clauses. Administrative language. Routine updates he had ignored. And then it became clear, not just to the father, but to everyone in the room. This wasn't a sudden takeover. It was a long, quiet restructuring that had been running in the background for years, unnoticed because it looked too normal to question. The son finally spoke for the first time, voice calm. You didn't lose anything today. You just noticed it. The simplicity of it hit harder than any insult could have. Even the court staff seemed frozen for a moment, realizing they had been operating under a system whose real control structure they never questioned. The female legal assistant exhaled softly, almost smiling, like she had finally confirmed a theory she had suspected for a long time. The father, however, just stared at the documents, as if waiting for them to change back into something he could argue with. The silence after the revelation didn't break immediately. It settled first, heavy and uncomfortable, like the entire courtroom had collectively forgotten how to breathe. The father was the first to try to recover from it, but his voice came out uneven. This has to be some kind of setup, he said, forcing a laugh that no one joined. You people think you can just rewrite reality with paperwork? No one answered him right away. Not because they didn't have answers, but because the answers were already written, signed, and validated years ago. The lawyer simply closed the folder with calm precision, like someone finishing routine maintenance on a system that had already completed its task. The structure was never hidden, he said quietly. It was just ignored. The father turned toward his son, searching for something: anger, guilt, regret, anything he could use to anchor himself. But the son didn't give him that. He stood the same way he had from the beginning, calm, steady, almost detached. You let me speak for years, the son said finally. You just never listened. That was it. No shouting. No revenge speech. Just a factual observation that landed harder than any confrontation. The judge cleared the final ruling in a measured tone. Ownership remained with the son. Full authority confirmed. All disputed claims dismissed. The words were procedural, but their effect was final. Around the room, people began to move again slowly, like a system rebooting after a major update. Papers were collected, devices were checked, conversations resumed, but the energy had permanently changed. What had started as a humiliation trial had quietly turned into a structural audit of who had actually been in control all along. The female legal assistant exchanged a brief look with the lawyer again, this time with a small smile that suggested shared understanding rather than surprise. Something unspoken passed between them: respect, familiarity, maybe even the comfort of two people who had seen this outcome coming long before it arrived. The father, however, stayed seated for a moment longer than necessary. Not because he had anything left to argue, but because standing up meant accepting that the version of reality he had mocked for years was already gone. When he finally moved, it wasn't dramatic. No final speech. No protest. Just a slow realization that he had been loud in a system that never needed his permission to operate. Outside, the son walked out first, not celebrating, not smiling, just moving forward as if nothing had changed, because for him, nothing ever had.